can be dangerous, especially when using such weapons. So you have to be careful. And this is why we have battle practice, a place where we can get together and we can practice our skills safely with training officers and master at arms, because it's so important that we have these sort of people in place in your group and in your reenactment society to teach you, to show you the safety, to listen to the rules, like not taking sharp weapons onto the battlefield. Now, as a medieval reenactor of many years experience and reenacting many other histories or eras of histories, I've had a few injuries. Often you'll come back from the weekend, not only are you completely drained of energy and it can take a couple of days to recover, but when I'm fighting spearmen, I'm going to have little round dot bruises. If I got hit on the sword on my arm, I'm going to have bruises from that if I'm not careful. I have lost a tooth through doing this hobby from an axe. I have got scars on my hands. So yes, I have certainly had a few injuries. I once really badly damaged my ankle on camp, but you do have a lot of wonderful trained people as well as medical trained people to look after you. So safety is so important, especially when you're fighting, because you've got to be safe, and especially this day and age, because what we do not want to do as enthusiasts of the hobby is bring the hobby into disrepute and give it a bad name. So we must be careful, we must practice carefully, safely, listen to the officers. You start off as a spearman at the lowest of ranks and you work your way up. It takes a while to be able to use a sword or an axe. You can't just jump into the hobby and say, I brought a sword, I'm going to use that, I'm not using a spear, because you're going to be pulled to one side and said you can't use a sword yet until you've had proper training, and that takes time. And some people have been doing this hobby for 40 years and they still don't know everything. So practice, and get used to your kit as well. It's so important that when you're running around the battlefield, you've got nothing that can trick you over, because falling over in this kit can be quite dangerous as well, or even more dangerous if you're wearing stuff like plate armour, or if you're a Roman or a medieval knight, for instance. So you have to be so careful. And don't forget, guys and girls, to get a tetanus jab as well. It's very important that you keep up to date with that. That was something Eggle always reminded me of, and I did actually take his advice and get one some years back. So be careful, because the weapons we use, most of them are blunt, but we do have sharp weapons around camp. You may be asked to chop some wood up, you may be demonstrating some crafts, you're working some wood with a sharp knife. One slip and you've badly hurt yourself. In fact, I can remember during an American Civil War battle when I was fighting in hand combat a Confederate. He had a bolt, and on the bolt he had a hook, and my hand got impaled on his hook. It was behind his back, and I was saying, I can't move my hand. My hand was fastened, so somebody had to pull my hand off the hook, and it literally went in like an inch into my hand. So over the years, I've had a lot of injuries myself, but I've also seen within the 18th and 19th century people having fingers blown off. In the early days of reenacting in the 90s when I joined, I saw one guy have an arm blown off. I saw another guy who had a splinter from a cannon. When it misfired, the ramrod wasn't being used correctly and it went straight through his lower arm, and he had a splinter from there out of his elbow and lost his arm. So again, you have to be very careful. And there's the infamous Peritrins of Games Workshop, the guys that designed a lot of the miniatures in the 80s, and one of them, they both were reenactors, and one of them lost an arm from a misfire from a cannon. So do be careful, because let's face it, you only have one life at a time, and I hope, and it's so important. It's not just that, you're also looking after your friends and your family on camp, so you're also making sure that they're safe, they're not in danger, because that's the last thing you want to do is hurt somebody. In fact, many years ago when I was at the Robin Hood Festival in Nottingham, it was always around October time, the end of the year, the last event. I was in the battle arena fighting a guy called Whiff, and I was using a sword, and I touched the top of his shield with my sword, and he pushed it up, and it bounced up and cut his chin for about ½ inch cut on his chin, and blood was pouring out. And I said, "You all right, Whiff? You all right?" He said, yeah, I'm fine, carry on. So we carried on fighting, even though blood was pouring down his face, all over his clothes, because he actually loved it. It was a really good experience for him. You know, he put a plaster on it, it was fine. It wasn't too bad of a cut, it's just slight graze, but it certainly bled because the cheek is very bloody. So do be careful. Do get used to your kit. If you wear and buy some ring mail, a ring shirt, wear it around your house, wear it around your garden first. Get used to the weight, because some days you could be carrying, you know, 4 or 5 stone, you know, quite a few pounds of weight on your body. What you do not want to have is to end up with a bad back, because yes, my back was ache now and again, not only because I was in a bad crash many years ago with a big lorry, but because I've been running around the battlefield. It does make you think, all these old reenactors are getting arthritis in there, especially your left knee, because you use a shield and your shield isn't quite big enough to cover your left knee. So some, you know, reenactors are quite notorious for striking and trying to get your upper knee and your upper leg, and you hit your knee. So the amount of times I've been smacked in an axe, by an axe or a sword with my left knee, and it does ache now and again, and I do worry about arthritis and all of that in the future. So it's so important that we are safe as a hobby, because we don't want to ruin the hobby. You don't want to go to an event and end up, you know, having a really bad accident. And there's certainly been a few occasions where people have been killed by shields, for instance, have been killed in reenactment. So again, that is the last thing you want to happen to you. So and it's common sense, it's practical common sense as well, which a lot of people don't seem to have anymore in this world. I don't know why. It's so sad, because we do need more common sense in the world. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are the ways that when you do reenacting, when you dress up, that you keep safe? I think it's very advisable that you buy yourself a good first aid kit. Although if you're in a group, your group should have a first aider and a good first aid kit. I think most societies will have a first aider or a few first aiders. Most event organisations will have an ambulance on site as well, which is another great way to ensure that if something does happen, you can get seen to ASAP, because that can make a big difference. And like I said, all over my hands, I've got a few scars on my arms. I've got a bad scar from a cut from a sword that went straight through a gambeson and a leather jerkin and cut me on my elbow. So over the years, I have definitely suffered. If you fall over wearing stuff like this, it's going to hurt, but you do have a good time. And that's the whole aspect. It is about teaching the public about history, but it's also about yourself having a good time with your friends, and that is the most important aspect of this video. So do practice safely. Do consider that when you go away, that you know what you're doing and you've been trained well enough. And if you don't feel like you've been trained enough, put your hand up and say it and speak. You say, "Look, I need more work on the spear, please. I don't feel very safe using the axe. Can I have some one-to-one combat training?" And your training officer will meet your needs. A lot these days we have to pass tests, especially in the much later periods. If you're using a musket, you must be efficient with the musket and pass the test, because again, that's safeguarding the society and safeguarding what we do as reenactors. And I love this hobby. It's one of the best hobbies you can ever get into. So I hope this video, you know, and there's no script. I don't use scripts for my videos. There's no keywords. This is just me talking from the top of my head to give you guys a little bit of advice about safety. Yes, I think that was a very, very good video. And it's a goodbye from Braggy in his Anglo-Saxon Boarcrest home.